Hopefully this works. Yes, it was okay.
Zoom punya problem.
Okay.
You're on.
We're on now. So good afternoon. Welcome to Penang, Georgetown. We're upstairs from the Blue Room. This restaurants have started opening in Georgetown, and it's quite full downstairs. So we had to move upstairs. Upstairs from the Blue Room, we got our durian. For anyone who doesn't know what a durian is, it's durian season here in Penang. Okay, let's start. We only got an hour. We have here with Najwa. I met Najwa in a batik exhibition, Najwa, if you remember. It was a Rumah Reka exhibition, and you walked in, and I thought, wow, she's Najwa. And I asked to take a picture with you, and shyly I said. And then you came to perform here, concert in Penang, and we've been in touch, and we're talking to you about possible projects, and I'm really looking forward. I mean, everybody knows who you are here in Malaysia, but I didn't want to introduce long accolades. So please check out the website on what young woman has done. Okay, then we have Mark Anthony without the Cleopatra. Mark Anthony Carpio is the choral conductor of Madrigal Singers Philippines, and they performed in Penang twice in 2012 and 2017. And Mark was here in 2012. And
Yes.
Mark, you are from Manila, yeah? You're based out of
Yes, I
Manila.
am.
And then
Yes.
there's Robbie, who I met many, many years ago in someone else's show. And he was doing this thing called Unappeased about dead bodies or soul or something like that. I can't quite remember, but I was so intrigued by the music elements of that show that I kept in touch, and we brought him back for a project called Intriguing Instruments. Robbie is out of Melbourne. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Like I said, it's very nervous about the whole thing, so you've got to hold my hand and guide me through, yeah? We're going to start with Najwa. Where have you been these last 3 months, and where were you at lockdown? And did you have fears, and did you have like nervousness about what's happening, or were you comfortably in Kuala Lumpur?
I've actually been in my home with my husband here in Kuala Lumpur. Just for the whole lockdown, I was really, really paranoid and scared to go out. So most of the time, I was scared to even go and get groceries. So a lot of times I was just like finding out different ways to get groceries online, and do as many things as possible remotely without having to go out. And I think the anxiety definitely was heightened when all of this started happening, because there was so many uncertainties with regards to just what's happening in the world and what's going to happen to my career. And I think that's on everyone's mind, I think. So I think I hear people talk about like panic attacks, and I was just always like, oh, okay, I hope that never happens to me. But this being at home for months and having to face all these things, definitely it suddenly, I was affected by it. And I actually, on the eve of my birthday, I spent my birthday in lockdown. And on the eve of my birthday, I'll remember this forever, 2020, I got my first panic attack. Yay. And it was scary, but it was also, it was just like, wow, okay, this is real, So yeah.
Actually, there's been a lot of people who have not spoken about mental health issues during this COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
It's quite scary. Depression, for instance, fear, not knowing. You think about your work at all? Did you focus on your work, or just grocery shopping and when to get food on the table first?
I think, like the first 2 weeks, I was honestly I was like, because in this house, it's really just my husband and I. My husband doesn't talk very much. So can you imagine just like being cooped up in the house, just the two of us? So for the first 2 weeks, I think it was sort of like a retreat for us. We were doing all this like, meditation and trying to be all zen and like, and we were actually enjoying it. It was actually nice. And I think I didn't really think about singing so much. I didn't really think about music so much. I just took it as a time to like reflect and a time to just like, oh, okay, maybe this is the time for me to now finally like talk about that self-care that I've been talking about, and just taking time for myself, not worrying about work, not worrying about when my next release is going to be. It was quite liberating,
Internalize it.
yeah, until I guess after the 2 weeks when everyone sort of realized, okay, this is not going to be just 2 weeks, this is going to happen for a while. That was when I started getting all these different inquiries about doing, live shows online and participating in like projects where we would all just record from our homes and share the videos with other people. So that was when I finally had to like go back, like switch back to my artist mode, but in a very not, I wouldn't say unusual, but I guess, yeah, in a way unusual. It's like, it's not something that we're used to doing as much in Malaysia, I feel, like this whole doing live. I mean, now it's becoming more and more common, right? Like these live streams. But I think back before all of this happened, we were still very much like, slowly getting into that, but mostly it was just a lot of like physical, not contact, what would you say? Just, yeah, like a lot of the experiences were like.
Maybe you're lucky that your husband doesn't talk too much. You might have stranded him if he's who talks too much. But yeah, I think this last 3 months, a lot of people have reflected on humanity and climate change and green world. And also the fact that suddenly you see pictures of Venice with clean water or Iceland having ice. So I think we internalize a lot, So now we go to Mark. Where were you? Where did you spend your lockdown and what were you doing?
Here in my home, I stay in a building. In Manila, in Metro Manila, in one of the cities. It's called Quezon City. I've been here since March. I've been locked down here in my apartment, in my condo unit. You see, we had a concert. Our last concert was held on February 29 and March 1. We were actually very worried at the time because we were receiving news about this COVID-19, and after that we still went on rehearsing, and we got into lockdown in the second week, I think, on March 15, and we took advantage of that because, as I think everybody knows, especially here in the Philippines, that our choir is one of the busiest choir in the country. So we took advantage of that to rest, to take a break, and some of the singers had to go home to the provinces and join their families. So that was a good thing. It was at first we were following the news. Well, I was following the news, but then after a couple of weeks, I got tired of following the news because
depressing, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we were getting all the bad news. We were not getting the good ones.
Well,
But
sorry.
yes, but like Najwa, I took advantage of this the first weeks to take a break. I got in contact with, or got in touch with friends, colleagues from other countries as well, and started to do things which I never had a chance to do. Primarily, the first thing I went into doing was cooking my own food, because it took me this long for me to learn how to cook my own food, and those. I'm very happy that now I can do a lot of different dishes here. And I also got to do one of the other things that I did not have a chance to do before was to do some exercises for myself, some physical activity, which I got to do here in my unit. So I can proudly say that I lost some pounds because of that.
Lucky you.
But
I put on weight. How many singers are there in a group in Madrigal Singers? How many of them in the group?
Well, more or less, there are 20. In that concert that we
Yeah,
had that last February, there were 21 singers. Yes.
yeah.
So, and then we have
So most
some,
of us spend time with food and family.
again, sorry.
That's right.
So,
Most 20 singers, 2021.
I'm sorry, Joe, you're breaking up.
20 singers. Hear me?
Yes. There are 20 singers
Yeah, yeah. From all over
all over the
Philippines.
Philippines. Yes. So some of them had to go home and fly to their and join their families. And some of them had to, no, not some, just most of them had to do a lot of adjustments during the first month or so of the lockdown. So we really, because of that, we really decided not to do any meeting or any meeting online. We did not see each other until after 2 months. That's when decided we cannot go on like this. We are a choir. We
Yeah.
have to do something. At least we can do. We cannot be may not be able to sing together, but we can do something. We can concentrate on developing some skills individually, and we can just meet online to make that happen.
Did you use the online platform to rehearse? Can
Yes.
you rehearse online
Yes.
in the choir?
No, no, no. We don't rehearse,
Yeah.
but we discuss a lot of
This guy.
things.
Okay.
Yes, and these are young singers. So, as a teacher myself, I decided that I could take advantage of this time to teach them things which could help them develop some skills as a chorister.
Now you, Robbie.
Yes.
Yeah, I was in Adelaide the end of February, March, and they had the Adelaide Festival, Fringe and Festival. There
Yeah.
were concerts in the park. Nobody seems to have been worried about COVID. No one was
Mm.
wearing masks. But I think it's been really good that it hasn't gone down badly in Adelaide, because I was there. When I flew back, we had the lockdown in Malaysia. So how has it
Yeah.
been for you the last 3 months?
I didn't realize that you came.
I was in
If I
I was in Adelaide. Yeah,
if I would have known, I would have traveled to see you.
next time.
Look, it started off like quite bumpy for me, because before we even knew exactly what was going on in Australia, um, we knew we had to isolate. We had to do a few things. In my case, my father lives in Sydney. I had to travel there to make sure that he was going to be okay because he lives by himself. So I thought, okay, well, we have to set him up, make sure he has the food he needs, make sure he understands what he can and can't do. There was a lot of things just to make sure that he wasn't going to do anything silly, especially in his mid 90s. Occasionally people do things, they think they're doing the right thing, but it could be catastrophic. So I set that up for him. I was happy. I was about to leave, um, and then I got a phone call about all my work, and slowly I started getting the emails. I started getting the phone calls from musicians. Everyone's saying everything's cancelled, 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 cancelled. So before I knew it, it was like the reality had kicked in that 100% of my work had vanished for the rest of the year, which was frightening. And then I couldn't process that properly. But then after a few days, it was like, okay, well, look, maybe this is only going to last for a few months or something. Let's see what happens. And then I was just about to leave for Melbourne, and then I got a phone call from my best friend's wife. Said that my best friend tragically passed away. So it was like this happened in probably 4 days for me. Like the news of COVID, the news setting up my father, and the news of losing my work, my best friend. So I was a bit shocked, to be honest with you. Like at that point, I was like, this is going to be a really tricky time for me, and for everyone. So then I made my way back to Melbourne, and you know, I was thought I was with my partner. We were trying to work out how we're going to live, and people going crazy in Australia. They were, I mean, I'm sure it's the same everywhere in the world. But you go to a supermarket, you couldn't find any toilet paper, you couldn't find any detergent, you couldn't find any, you know, sanitizer, you couldn't find everything. You know? But people were going crazy here. They thought you have to buy everything. They thought it was the end of the world, and department stores had to, you know, put new measures, security. They were stopping people, you know, buying more than they needed to. So I think at that point it was like this is real. This is quite a real war that's going on. It's not the usual type of war, but it's a type of war. And so you know, it took a while. It probably took about a month, a little bit longer than a month before you start seeing people outside, you know, in general, settling in a little bit. And I think in some ways they were looking at, I mean, like I'd walk out into the street and I would see, because, you know, no children are going to school or anything like that. So what you see is children playing outside the house and having fun. Or you see all your neighbors saying hello to you and doing the gardening. Or you see, you know, people like exchanging cooking recipes and people, you know, like everyone at home just, you know. So it's quite, in some ways, you know, it's something that was, you know, like a disaster. You know, there was some really beautiful things that came out of that because I think, you know, as dangerous as COVID-19 is, you know, it's kind of given us a small gift, you know, like a gift to kind of realize, slow down. The world is too fast. It's not, you know, we're not really, you know, in this race. This is not a race that necessarily is good for us, you know. So I think COVID slows us down to a speed where we kind of can analyze that and go, what are those things that I really want to do? You know, I want to stay. I want to stay at home. I want to work on my studio. I want to develop new skills. I want to develop new techniques as an artist. I want to develop new concepts. You know, I want to eat good food. I want to exercise. I want to just watch TV with my partner. I just want to, you know, there's so many things that you don't have a chance to do because we're not brainwashed, but you just like you've jumped on this particular type of train that you just cannot get off. So I think it's given us an opportunity to get off the train and analyze everything around us and go, look, what are those things that we really want outside of the things that we thought we need? What are those things that we really want? So I kind of feel like, you know, now I'm watching civilization go back to normal slowly. In Australia, we don't have that many cases, but the cases are still there. And they're very conservative about how many people can come to someone's house. It very quickly went from 5 people to 20 people in Australia. And now the numbers have jumped back up in Melbourne and the numbers will jump up everywhere else. So this will be something I feel like we'll be stuck with for quite a while. But it's the adjustment's going to be interesting for artists because we're the first people that lose our work and we're the last people that's going to go back to work. I feel.
Certainly true in Malaysia. But I'm so proud of Malaysia. Actually. One of the safest place to be was Penang, because everything was, we didn't have toilet paper problems. We didn't have shopping, supermarkets were all stocked well. So I was very proud to be in Penang and Malaysia. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a good time to rethink, reflect, reimagine, and find inner strength. We go to the next question. So apart from the groceries and now settling down, are you thinking of post-COVID now, Nacho?
I am, especially now that we've gotten, you know, news that for the arts like theaters and also cinemas, they're slowly opening up. Like venues are allowed to have up to 250 audiences. I think starting July 1st, right? But the thing, I think because of that, it's also, I mean, it's like there's some kind of hope for us to go back to work. But also, I think for me, I feel like I'm not ready to go, you know, because I feel like with all everything that happened, It almost feels like, I mean, because it's still there. It's not like COVID is gone. It's just that now we've taken extra precautions to make sure that we don't, spread the virus around. So there are obviously SOPs and stuff, right? But I think for me, I might give it a little more time before I start, saying yes to live shows with a live audience. I think also for me, it's like just I mean, I'm always more cautious about, okay, like I need to, okay, there's the whole wear your mask, wash your hands. We've heard that, repeated over and over. But especially for me, like as a singer, I'm like thinking about like, oh, but I can't do that, right? I can't like wear a mask while I'm singing because I've actually tried that. Like I mean, not like I've tried it like practicing now, but there was actually a time, it was actually during, you remember when we had the haze? Right, so in Malaysia, like it's sort of like a yearly occurrence. So we always had this haze problem, and so at the time I was like, I think I was coughing a lot because I wasn't getting enough like clean air, and I had rehearsals. So it was I wasn't sure what to do. So my friend was like, oh, why don't you try, like maybe since you have the mask, maybe it's because the air inside is not very clean, and you're like swallowing that air every time you breathe to sing. So I tried that, and I realized that's like, it's a complete opposite, because you kind of get like dizzy from just the CO2, right? So it's like, it's a challenge, but I feel like it feels like it's so, I mean, it's not petty, but in a way it is, because you want to be able to like breathe in properly. I think Mark, you would understand as well, right? Like as a singer, or like we want to have like a proper environment for us to be able to sing properly, and then because it's so much of singing involves breathing, and it's a bit of a challenge, I think, right now, because I'm just worried about that. It's like, oh, or will I be in an audience where someone might be infected, and then we would be unknowingly infected by that. So as much as I'm in some ways I'm happy for those who can now go back to work. I think for me personally, I need a bit more time, but I also feel like it's quite an interesting, like we've been hearing this word a lot, like pivot, this whole like MCR, people are talking about pivot. Like I think now a lot of venues, I feel, are slowly opening up to this idea of having live streams, right? So they have like the performers at the venue, but no audience, it's just the crew. And they have proper like camera set up with different angles. There's a sound engineer making sure that the sound, the mix is right for broadcasting. I don't think this is something that we explored much before COVID. It seems like it's now that is the new, that's another word, new norm, right?
I'm old school. I don't know. I saw a picture of an opera house with plants.
Oh yeah, I saw that one too.
Yeah, can you imagine, as a singer or a musician, you're performing to an empty field or empty opera house? I'm old-fashioned. I want seats back. Let's find a vaccine. Let's find better social habits. Right. So Mark, what about you? Post-COVID?
Well, almost the same thing as Najwa. We are happy that the lockdown has been easing up, and we have been told that come July we will be able to gather, but only in a certain numbers. So we cannot gather the whole choir. It's not possible for the whole choir to meet. But we could. We were told that we could rehearse in groups of maybe maybe in 10 singers or 8 singers, and I think that is good enough for me. That is good enough. That rather than not seeing each other. But of course, we have to follow the guidelines that are given to us, the safety precautions, and make sure that everybody is okay as they travel from their homes to where we will be rehearsing. But we also thought of that performing a concert. But Joe, you've seen us perform. You've seen how the Madrigal Singers perform. We are seated beside each other.
I know.
We are
Can't
really
social
side by side.
distance 22 people on
Exactly.
stage. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're thinking of modifying that for the sake of this, and it will be I agree that it is really different and difficult to perform with no audience, especially for our choir.
For
So we
everyone.
thought that yeah, we thought that we could perform. We could do an online concert, of course, practicing social distance with the singers at in certain distance from each other. But we would try to invite also some people, a few people, who will also be in safe distance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're thinking of that.
The
Yeah.
energy. Yeah. So Robbie, so yeah, you mentioned like yeah, not all of us have trust funds or have huge savings. I certainly don't have, and I started worrying about money and stuff and salaries and all that. So have you now think what's going to happen post COVID? Are you positive about the next couple of months?
Um, things are so unsure here that I couldn't tell you. I couldn't even predict what is going to happen next because our government, for example, is pushing everyone to go back to work, but our work, our work completely or not completely solely, but for artists, we depend on audiences. Without those audiences, we don't have that work. Um,
Yes.
the whole thing is about, of course, performing in front of people. Of course, the exchange of funds that happens because of that, and there's several other things that go into play because of that. Without that, um, I'm a little bit worried at the moment because they're not. There's no discussion here about how we're going. There is a very small discussion about it, but there's no government official that's saying this is how we're going to get the artists back to work. And if anything, you're hearing about bigger establishments and venues, basically saying we're about to close down. We're not going to be able to survive. So I'm hoping in the next couple of months there might be some packages that the government might be able to sort of, because Australia's it's quite conservative still. They do believe that the building industry is the most important industry. They're still talking about essential services, and they don't consider the arts an essential service. They haven't verbally said that to the artists. So I'm I think it might be an interesting conversation over the next couple of months. What is going to happen? Because the government's made an effort to give everyone a bit of money just to survive a little bit, just until September. But we have no prospects after September, and they're still talking about, in terms of, I've been talking to travel agents, and I'm meant to be going to France to play in a festival in France in October. And the prospects of that with airlines and different, and even those other countries who are like, well, let's go ahead. We'll say we're going to do the festival in October, but can you find out if you're allowed to travel? Can you find out if you're allowed to get on a plane? Can you find out if your immigration will allow you to leave the country? There's so many technical things there. So just to make it simpler for us to just kind of feel comfortable going back to work. But that's without even the paranoia of like, should I even go because I could get infected getting on a plane. I could get infected going to a festival or country. So so for me, I'm just looking at I'm looking like this period of time like a long residency in some way. Like just do those things that you need to do, everything that you need to catch up on as an artist, anything you need to develop, any new skills you want to develop, you want to tune into anything new, develop those now because you'll probably need those later. There is a prospect that maybe and it might be the same in all your countries or wherever anyone else that you're going to be interviewing, of course, wherever they come from. But there is a prospect that maybe they might, because we can't travel internationally, that those governments and those festivals might support the local artists a lot more.
Yes. It's actually
And that's
happening.
yeah.
It's actually happening in Malaysia. We're
Yeah.
looking at local audiences, local festivals, regional, as in Singapore and maybe Thailand with the borders. But Shanghai International Festival has actually released the dates that they are going on in October. But
Yeah.
like what Najwa says, or even Mark says, we don't know.
Yeah.
What if the second wave comes out next month? Or what if we hear horror stories coming out of America and even China and think, how can you plan when you don't know? So I like what you said, Robbie. I'm doing the same thing. We're strengthening, looking at my strengths, looking at my weaknesses, building internal so that I'm ready post-COVID, you know? Yeah, and survival packages are only food on the table for the moment. But I
Yes.
like what Darwin said this, like survival of the fittest. It's not the strongest that survive, it's those that are best at adapting. So I think we've
Yeah.
all learned to adapt. What is the new normal that will fit you? I don't want the new normal to be no chairs in the audience. I can't believe an opera singer wants to sing to an empty hall, or a choir wanting to sit 5 feet away from each other, singing to an empty hall. Or you, Robbie, playing live music, or Najwa, singing to a room that's empty and just a camera recording you. Unless it's a recording, then it's fine. Yeah. Um, Okay, the next question is, we touched on this already, the industry. Obviously, the industry is affected. You hear government grants. I don't want to go government grants, but I just want to talk about individuals. The industry, as a singer in Malaysia, as a choir conductor in Manila, a singer, a musician in Australia, how is the industry being helped? Governments are helping out. In Malaysia, it's survival packages, and they've also given great grants for technology and the arts. So people have to pivot. I mean, I myself pivoting. People have to pivot and think cleverly about how to make use. And there are grants out there, how you have to look. What do you think on the industry in Malaysia, Najwa? How is it going to affect us, short term and long term?
I think already, I mean, obviously with everything that's happened, I mean, since March, right? So I see pros and cons, honestly. Like I'd like to think that just like what Robbie was saying, that there's some positive things that have come out of, you know, of this situation that we've all been in. And one thing that I noticed that I feel like that I personally felt maybe, yeah, is that I mean the first few months, because everyone was just at home, right? I think as an artist, whenever I like, you know, organize shows or, you know, perform outside, actually I do wonder whether I'll have audience coming. I feel like that seems to be a thing that I've experienced a lot, where, like, you know, especially when you're organizing your own show, right? You don't really have any like backup or anything, and you're just doing everything yourself. The concern was always like, oh, will I have people coming and watching my performance, right? And I think the struggle even before COVID was always that for me. I didn't like, you know, it wasn't like I could just fill up, you know, like, oh, you know, 500
Carnegie Hall.
you know, like even to get 100 people to come, you know, because I think in general already with the arts and music and everything, a thing that I've experienced or observed with like Malaysian is that we do not like to pay for to watch performances. So if you're an artist, it's really difficult. Like if you're selling tickets and you want people to come, you know, and buy your tickets, it's like it's always sort of been an issue for me. So one thing that I experienced, which was quite the opposite, when this whole thing started, I think because people were cooped up in their homes, they had so much time, you know, that they were more likely to participate in any of these like live, if I had an Instagram live, or or if I posted something online, I felt like the likelihood of people um, participating, connecting with you during at least the 3 months that we were, young, we couldn't go out at all, right? Like most of the time, people were just, so most of their times were actually spent at home on their phones, you know.
Threat audience.
So yeah, so it felt like, for me, it felt like, oh wow, this is a change, because normally it's like I would post something online and no one would care, so much. I mean, this is the reality, like it's not like I've gotten like 1 million views or anything, right? But the reality is that, like, some that people are just so caught up with everything.
They trapped at home, so they have to listen.
Yeah. So this one is like, okay, well, what am I going to do anyways? And it was actually, it's sort of like an interesting thing that's happened, because after that, everyone started doing live, like shows, right? Live on IG, and so it was almost like if you were like club hopping, you could do that like on Instagram, where you were like, oh, today someone's doing a show at 9 p.m. I'm going to go onto their Instagram and watch their thing. And then I'll hop on to like the next account, and within an hour, you've watched like maybe 5 different performances,
I'm just going to read out 2 comments that came quickly. Yeah. One's from Gladys Valenzuela. Hi, Sir Mark. So obviously somebody reveres you, Mark. And then Ida from Penang and Robbie sends condolences for your death of your friend. Now, I just want to pick up what Najwa said about, there's 2 questions that came out. One's from Bachomi Boy Singapore, Sean Nudusami, also from Singapore. What are your thoughts on the slew of online shows that's gone online? Does it really actually help the arts? Or do you think it's a waste of time trying to do anything online when there's so much content out there? Because people are trying to sell 10 ringgit shows when there's Saddleswell show free, or New York City Ballet is free. Right. What is your take, all 3 of you, on this thing gravitating on online? I can understand it for this period of time, but to charge, it's very hard, as you say, Najwa, to charge people to come and see a live show.
Yeah.
I had a problem for 9 years, charging 25 ringgit to see top of the world class shows. People still didn't pay. So I feel even more miserable than you, Najwa. It's been hard. So what's your take on online shows and people trying to monetize it? Mark, you go first.
Yeah.
Well, here in the Philippines, we don't have
Mark, you want to take it?
much. Hello? Yes. Yeah. You can hear me, Joe.
Stopped.
Did Joe stop?
I think Joe stopped.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm gonna continue talking about.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, here in the Philippines, we don't have those online shows where you have to pay in order to watch them. We do had, since I think it started in the 2nd month of the lockdown, we did have a lot of fundraising activities where we had a lot of performers, especially singers and choirs even, do online performances or posting videos of past performances in order to encourage people to contribute or to donate in order to help more people, to help to those who are in need. And we continue to have that until now. So we don't have much of those online shows where you have to pay.
You think it would work? You think it would work? People would pay?
You were asking a while ago about how the government is helping the people in our field, but it's actually probably a very difficult question to answer now, because we know very well that we are, well, it's unfortunate that we are in the last in the last of the list of people in need. So there are more people who are trying to help, and the artists are probably in the last at the bottom of the list. But what we are experiencing is that the artists are the ones also helping out, helping here, and organizing these fundraisers in order to help more people, which I think is good. The Philippine Madrigal Singers is a resident choir of the Cultural Center of the Philippines. It is the main performance venue of artists here in the Philippines, and we are fortunate that we continue, that the people in the cultural center continue to organize things for the sake of the artists. So there are a lot of meetings going on, workshops, and encouragement to all the companies, to all artistic companies.
Okay, good. Robbie,
Yes.
does any of these online thing, people rushing to go online, actually is helping the industry? Because is it just here for a short time, or is it actually making us so dependent on technology?
Um, I feel like it serves a purpose, and it has served a purpose at this time. You know, under the circumstances, you know, we're able to use the internet to do all those things that we normally do anyway. We can refine them. We can do better things with them. It might, you know, it 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 has changed a few sort of local venues and events that do happen in Australia every week. Now they're online. So it's like you said about Darwin. You know, it's like it's those who will, you know, change the way that they see things that'll survive. But I don't look. I believe I'm a very strong believer that, and it's, you know, that the arts is something that brings, you know, not to sound sort of corny in any way, but it does. If you think about how many people it's brought into your life, how many people you've connected with through the arts, it's ridiculous. I don't think there's any other industry on the planet that does that, and how it can bring people together like that. Like Mark was saying, you know, you know, there's some issues when it comes to, you know, the way that the governments see our industry. And I mean, recently in Australia they did a study. It was a survey over 20 years in Australia of how much the arts industry contributed to the economy financially. And because there's always a rivalry in our country between arts and sport, and sport is our main. They look at that as the main cultural thing, that's the most significant thing to the general public. But the stats that they did over 20 years, they found out that not just the arts, but the music alone, the music industry alone, 4 times folded the sports industry financially in 20 years. 4 times, you know? And the government's still not understanding the importance of that and doing something about that. So because I feel like sports plays like politics plays a role within sports, and you know, and that's how it revolves. It's a very political game, you know, the sports industry. So you know, I'm still a little bit concerned. I'm hopeful because I feel like, as you know, as a civilization, we'll probably prevail, and we'll probably all want to help you because we all want to get back to normal to some degree, you know. But until then, I don't know really the online thing. I mean, it plays an important role at the moment because we do so much on the internet and we work online so much, and we are innovative, so we will find a way to still present things to audiences and to the general public. But we really need to make contact with people publicly, I feel.
There was another question from, again, by Johnny Boy from Singapore. Isn't that tickets for free? And I think, like you said, it's only situation. It's free now because we're brand building. A good example is a Singapore company called Wild Rice. They showed online the production of Emily of Emerald Hill, and I might get the figures wrong, but something like 8,000 views. But it's a great time to put online who you are, what you are, and build back your brand loyalty. So I think we can use technology to help us, but not be dependent on it as the way out. I'm old school, maybe because of the age, you know. Najwa, did you put any online concert in these last 3 months or last few weeks?
Yeah, well, I did. I was actually I did two sort of online, yeah, let's say online showcase. The first one was on Instagram. It was actually under Rio, because Rio, you know Rio, right?
Yes.
They were, yeah, so they organized this, like they were having different artists come in like almost every day or every other day. And so I did like a 45-minute set, which I think, like what Robbie was saying, it was a little weird to just, you know, be singing to it. It's basically here in my room, right? It was just like sort of, I'm definitely, I think most artists, you need, you know, the audience, you need to, the energy from the audience, you know, feeds you, and then, you know, that kind of, because it's never like 100% the way you planned it to be, you know. But when you have an audience, you get to like sort of feed off of their energy, and that was a little, it felt strange at first, you know. But somehow it was also quite interesting, because I was able to still, it made me realize that I was still able to connect with people, you know, and still sing for an audience, even though I'm not seeing them like physically. They were still able to listen to me, you know. And then the other one that I did was actually for, it was this, it's an online festival called Terang, which is Temasya Rangkaian, and it's basically, yeah, a group of like young artists who've come together and just kind of built this platform for other artists to come on board. And you know, I did a show just leading up to Eid, leading up to Hari Raya, and it was fun, you know. But at the same time, you know, it was just like, I don't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. At some point, I'm going to want to, you know, be out there. But it's also, yeah, but it's also given a chance for let's say my friends from other countries to come in to watch me sing if they're not able to, you know, physically be here.
I think that was the point with Wild Rice. They actually sold a strong narrative of what your production value was and how good it was. So, but I saw your Terang thing, you know. I watched that.
Oh, did you?
Like showcase that. I'm a fan. Robbie, I have two comments from Australians. TC Yokohama, who actually lives in Penang part-time. Robbie, great point about music contributing 4 times more than sports to Australia. But you see, this problem is everywhere around the world except France. We don't have a Ministry of Arts and Culture that is pushing the arts or culture agenda. It's not Malaysia, it's not Australia, it's very few countries have that. And then Deborah says, I agree, Robbie, actual human contact is so important. I think that's for all of us. I thought I was just old when I said that, but I think it's even for young performers. We just want that feedback, the aura of the energy of the room being full, or at least for somebody to listen and tell you what they feel or think from your music. Okay, we'll go to the last question, right? Would you come back to Penang? The reason why we're doing this thing, because I don't really think it's a great tool that I want to keep for the rest of my life. But I wanted to tell the narrative that, hey, please remember Georgetown. We're a little beautiful island that has great food, great great people. A lot of people collaborate with everybody around the world. So it's me saying, hey, look at us, come back and enjoy Penang. So Najwa, would you come back to Penang? Would you work with me? Or there's so many people in Penang. It's a small island. We need help. We need people to come in and work with us, collaborate. Would you come back?
Oh, absolutely. I have always, I think Penang has always had a special place in my heart. One, because the food is amazing, you know, and the energy of the people. It's just such a, like, I've never gone to Penang and not come back like, you know, feeling just that little bit more happier. It's just such a wonderful place to be in. And I think now that we're allowed to travel interstate, and I think amongst the three of us, I probably have the upper hand of, like, I am in Malaysia, and so I get to go to Penang, like, anytime. So it's lovely to finally be able to do that. So I think I might actually plan that soon, you know and I'd love to meet you when we go.
Yes, I'd love to. We can speak apart. I'd love for you to come up and let's chat and let's talk about everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mark,
definitely.
would you come back?
Of course. We've only been to Malaysia on those times that we went to Penang, to Georgetown. So those have been I'm not sure if the group has been to Malaysia before I came in, but then what I know
Maybe
of
we
your
should take
country
you
would be
to
more.
Kuala Lumpur too.
Why not? Yeah. Well, we did go there a couple of years ago. Um, but yes, the singers have very fond memories of Georgetown, and we have new singers now in the choir. I would love for them to experience that.
Let's plan something. I'm working on the idea of connecting Southeast Asia uh, and Australia. I always call it ASEAN, as in Australia and Southeast Asian nation. So, Robbie,
Yeah,
your turn.
Yes.
I agree.
Would you come back? I mean, I want to work with you, yeah?
Yeah. Of course. I mean, because I've been there twice now, right? And my first experience there, I was very lucky to really get a taste of the shamans and the different cultures that were there, the different temples, and really understand what that was, and then my second experience was coming to Georgetown, and seeing, experiencing the festival, experiencing the medical industry as well, because I got quite sick. But I'm just letting everyone know that they have an incredible medical system there. So, and they were amazing. So,
Me too.
and the food, and I just felt like the way that Georgetown has just become this melting pot, and it's a perfect place to have like an arts precinct in that region. It's just the perfect place for artists to go and work and just feel safe and comfortable and experience the culture. I just think it's wonderful. It's a great place.
I love Georgetown, and I think it's been great that people have come and really enjoyed it. And normally, Najwa, I've not sat with you in the Blue Room, but I think for most of the people that we've invited, they've actually sat down in the Blue Room with me, because I kind of like to meet performers, stage hands, lighting designers, because it's not about just you coming to perform, but it's us to interact and talk. And I think when I was working on the festival, I wanted to keep it very personal. I managed to see almost all the shows that goes on in the festival. Even if I sneak in for 5 minutes, I just made it the point that I did. So before we go off, just one last word about the future. One line, like, yes, we're gonna. I don't know. I'm not so clever about giving strong statements. Do you want to say a last word about something? Because we have like, oh no, we have 5 minutes. Okay, we can. I've been given this piece of paper that says, what are your future plans? In 1 minute. Eat and sleep and wait for it to die. It's COVID-19. Najwa.
Oh gosh, it's like I want to get philosophical, but at the same time, just sort of like thinking about, just going back to just what Robbie said. It's really hard to just plan anything right now, really, because you really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I think for me, it's really like to just take things one step at a time, a day at a time, and that's sort of my plan, actually. I think, yeah.
I agree, but I think especially to all the choristers out there, those who are listening, I think what we have to do really is to remain positive, to really think positive about all these things, and we shall sing again. We shall sing together again soon, if we remain if we have that attitude.
Robbie?
Yeah, I feel the same thing as everyone else. I mean, it's just going to be a matter of time. We will go back to the way we were, and we will. Yeah, I mean, if you think back to the days, back to the early 90s, mid 90s, 80s, 70s, we didn't have the internet. You know, we didn't have it. We were perfectly fine, and life was a little bit slower, but it was really beautiful, and we shared a lot. And so, okay, yes, we do have the internet at the moment. It does serve a great purpose, and it will serve a purpose. But I guess, just enjoy the try and enjoy the time that you have now to be with your families and your friends, and develop as many new skills as possible. Um, it'll, if anything, it just gives you a lot of hope and a lot to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, on a positive note, I was reading somewhere how the Renaissance came out after the plague. People were so renewed with good energy,
Yeah.
thinking, and then everybody was rushing with a new vigor for life because we were so close to death. Or I like the idea that a lot of people have started thinking about climate change, about wow, we've got greener waters because we stopped using. And yesterday, Priti Pan was mentioning that, especially with Malaysia wanting to go to the Oscars, let's realign our goalposts and whether our goalpost has got meaningful. I mean, like I've always felt, do something that's meaningful to yourself and everyone else. It's not about me and you, it's about us. Right? It's a
Yes.
collective.
Mm, that's right.
Yeah? So thank you very much. Really, this is my second session. I will get better. It's all about learning. You're never too old to learn. And
Yes.
Robbie, please come back. Indigenous sounds, music, intriguing instruments. Maybe we can work with NJWA on, there's called the gambus, which is a string instrument. I've always wanted to connect the gambus to the flamenco guitar and Islamic music. So I hope at some point we can all work together with vocal sounds. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you
That'd be
very much.
amazing. Amazing. Thank you,
Thank you,
Najwa.
Okay,
Joe.
Thank you, Mark.
there's a
Thank you
message
so
for you,
much.
Thank you, Robbie, Najwa.
Mark.
Thank
There's,
you. Nice.
Thank you,
there's a
Mark and
message
Robbie.
from Huile. Mark, so good to see you, looking good, relaxed, and smiling. And she wants you to come back to Penang. Actually, Penang people are really, really nice. I love Penang.
Yeah.
And Najwa, thank you for saying that you enjoyed here. Please come back. No, it's beyond the food. It's probably the place that you don't feel like a foreigner. Everyone treats you
Yeah.
like someone else because we've been cosmopolitan since like what,
Yes.
1700. And we were there even before Francis Light. We were selling elephants to India 2,000 years ago.
Mm.
So we've been cosmopolitan for a long, long time. So that's why the whole idea of this was to connect back good energies, invite you all to come back and help us build the brand, help us learn culture, help us promote culture. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Enjoy your weekend. For
You
everyone
too,
else,
Joe.
we'll see you next Saturday at 8 p.m. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.